know, just put it in the chat. I see it's the fourth one, four option. We have two for four option. Anyone else? Okay, everyone's going for the fourth. One of my friends went to high school over there. Oh.
Who? I probably know them.
Hi, hello. Hello.
Mateo.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good. Well, you saw me.
So we have Andrina going for Stratford, but then everyone else is going for the fourth option. I'm sorry, Andrina. The right answer is the fourth option, Charlottetown. That's the capital of Prince Edward Island. You learn new things every day. So now Cassie is gonna take us to the first place.
I'm not, well, maybe. Okay, so now our first stop is Confederation Center of the Arts. Cece, you have to do the slides. There we go. We'll just show you a few photos. There's one, and then there's this. So now I'm excited to pass things over to Cameron. He'll be speaking on the history of Confederation in Canada, which happened in PEI.
Thank you. I'll see if I can share my presentation here. I also work at the Confederation Center of the Arts. So that's my place of work. It doesn't seem to be letting me share. I'll try again.
Is it working now?
No.
Oh no.
It was working a second ago.
I know we.
This one.
Okay, now try.
Ah.
Hey, there we go.
We got it. I think we got it. Okay. I don't usually use slides, so this is going to be weird for me, but we'll see how it goes. So I'm going to talk to you guys about Prince Edward Island, and it's hard to talk about Prince Edward Island without talking about Confederation, which is a pretty important theme in Canadian history. It kind of marks the beginning of the country we know as Canada, and the conferences, the talks that took place that led to the decision to make the country first began in Prince Edward Island. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about PEI and the island's view of Confederation, which might not be what you think it is. Perhaps you didn't know, but Canada was not always a country. Before, it was known as British North America, and the places within it were colonies of England. They were owned by England. They were operated by England. We had governors who represented England's welfare, well-being interests here in the Maritimes and in the rest of British North America. So we had Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Newfoundland. They're all colonies of England. They have their own government, their own identity. They're essentially their own countries. They did not have much interaction and dealings with each other, especially the Maritimes being Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Newfoundland. That area did not have so much interaction with what we called the Canadas, not the country of Canada, but the colony of Canada was divided into two, Canada East and Canada West. We would now call Canada East Quebec, and Canada West is Ontario, and they were also a colony just like the others. A very different political system than what we now have in Canada. And it was because of this system and perhaps the failings of it that led to this push for a union. That union we call Confederation. But before Confederation came about, there was this other idea of maritime union. What if Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia united to become this colony or this country of the Maritimes? Well, that was what was first discussed. And in fact, that's what was going to be discussed. This idea of Canada wasn't even on the table until the Canadians pushed for it. And remember, when I'm saying Canadians, I'm just meaning people from Ontario and Quebec. This would be in 1864. They pick a date for this conference, September 1st, 1864. And the idea is to discuss this potential union of the Maritimes. Now, Prince Edward Island, in fact, is actually the least interested out of all of these colonies. Being completely surrounded by water, similar to Newfoundland as well, there wasn't this need, there was this security, this natural security. We felt like we were doing well on our own, and in fact, the island was doing quite well. Now, the Canadians, who had a bit of a difficult political situation at this time, were quite desperately looking for change, and the idea that some of these individuals, now known as the Fathers of Confederation, came up with was this idea of a union of all of these colonies into one greater country that would still support England. The Canadians, that being Ontario and Quebec, asked if they could join this conference, and the Maritimers said, yes, you can join. Interestingly enough, they only permitted the Canadians to join as observers. We weren't interested to hear what the Canadians had to say, but the Canadians knew how to get around that small roadblock. They arrived in a great steamship. You can see an image of a great steamship there called the SS Queen Victoria, right into the Charlottetown Harbor. The backdrop of this slide is an old sketch of the Charlottetown Harbor. That's more or less what it looked like. They were, of course, waiting before they landed. They had to wait before they were greeted. It was the official way to do things. Unfortunately, the man who was supposed to greet them, William Henry Pope was his name, was quite late. He had no idea the steamship came into the harbor until his cleaning lady burst into his office, tears streaming down her face. She was crying. She was in a panic. She believed the island was being invaded. She thought the Americans were attacking, something that many people in British North America were fearing, as during that same time, the American Civil War was underway. So, William Henry Pope, realizing it's not the Americans, he says, no, it's the Canadians. He now realizes he's quite late. He runs all the way down the main street of Charlottetown, not paved, covered in red island dirt. He falls down perhaps once or twice, as it's recorded that he's a little dirty by the time he gets down to the shore. He realizes there's nobody around to crew a ship to go out and greet the Canadians. That's because the circus was in town. It was actually the first time the circus came to the island in 22 years. So everyone was quite thrilled and everyone was at the circus. William Henry Pope had no one to crew a ship. He found one person, a man who will forever be known as the Lusty Fisherman. I'm not entirely sure why he has that name, but I'm sure he deserves it. Mr. Pope and this Lusty Fisherman, they row out to greet the Canadians on this SS Queen Victoria. Not the grandest welcome, and certainly one that the Canadians would not forget. Many islanders, of course, saw this ship and thought we were doomed. We thought we were under attack. But the welcome did not stop there. The Canadians came ashore. They brought with them lots of champagne and food and other grand things, and found that because the circus was in town, there was actually no room in Charlottetown for them to stay anywhere. We had this whole conference planned, but no one planned for this circus and the other effects that would come with it. So John A. Macdonald, George Brown, these big Canadian political figures didn't even have rooms to stay. They, for the most part, slept on their steamship. Every night they'd row back out. It was perhaps not the start to the conference that the Canadians had hoped for. There's a lot of things they're talking about. Provincial autonomy. What does that mean? Well, people wanted to have their identities. Quebec was certainly fighting very hard for this. Islanders identified a lot with this. The island's population was very small. And so we wanted to have our own political identity. A provincial government would see that our voice was still heard even under the central government, the great Canadian government. French and English would be united. That was the goal, not to get rid of one side or the other, but to unite them, find common ground. That's a big point of this conference. There was, of course, the discussion of using the dollar. Before that, we were using the British pound. We switched to the Canadian dollar, so our market would be better suited for trade with the United States. There was also, of course, the fear of the United States, this huge, well-equipped army to the south. Well, perhaps we should unite in case that army decides to look north. That was perhaps one of the biggest pushes for a union of confederation. Fun fact, some islanders at this conference, some of the delegates were very adamant and determined that Charlottetown should be the capital of Canada. Well, it was actually quite seriously discussed up until the point that a few Canadians, John A. Macdonald especially, really put his foot down and said, no, we must have a strong central government. Ottawa will be the capital. See, the Canadians had the idea of expanding to the west from the very beginning, and if the capital is all the way on the east, well, that's not the most enticing place for these colonies to the west to see as a place to represent them, perhaps. But the big reason, the big motivation was this Grand Trunk Railway, this intercontinental railway. The biggest idea, this railroad tying the oceans together from sea to sea, was a big part of this conference. A grand idea, some thought impossible, absolutely ludicrous, but one that all of the delegates were quite interested in, even here on the island. Trade was it was the way of the future at the time, and anyone who had a train was considered quite prosperous. It would increase trade and travel across the nation, uniting us naturally, and it could quickly transport troops if necessary. The big problem, however, for Prince Edward Island was that it couldn't reach Prince Edward Island. At that time, it was not possible to build a bridge across the waters. It was seen that the railroad would never reach us, and yet the island, in joining Confederation, would still have to help pay the cost. It just didn't make sense for many islanders. So the island resists. The island is quite politically strong. The island at the time is doing incredibly well with shipbuilding, in fact, building more ships per capita than any colony in the British Empire at the time, and strong trade with the United States. The island's population was rapidly growing. The island's future looked incredibly bright, and the island under Confederation in Canada didn't seem to favor very well. Many islanders, in fact, 98% of islanders were opposed to joining Confederation. And now we call ourselves the birthplace of Confederation. Not too sure what happened there. The island feared joining Confederation from our small population. Our voice would be drowned out in this great nation. The fear of Americans no longer wishing to trade with us, and the Canadians had very similar goods to what we had on the island. We didn't think trade with the Canadas would be very prosperous. And this idea, this looming threat of war with the United States, well, if Prince Edward Island didn't join Canada, likely the island would not have to send their sons and daughters to die in a war fighting the United States, should that ever happen. The island did not really want to join Confederation. However, the conference was remarkably successful. It was a party. When the delegates weren't discussing, they were having a pretty good time. They were, of course, drinking tons of champagne, 17 liquid tons of champagne to be exact, a huge amount. It still blows my mind when I really think about it. The meetings ended at 3 p.m., 3 in the afternoon, and the rest of the time they spent socializing. They played croquet, they went hunting, they danced, they toured the island, going to the beaches, eating and drinking the whole time. They never stopped. They had 2 lavish, amazing balls, one of which, the final one, went until 3 in the morning, champagne flowing the whole time. It was quite a remarkable event, and many important discussions, I'm sure, were had at this meeting. $13,000 worth of champagne is how much the Canadians brought. They knew perhaps they weren't entirely welcomed, and what better way to get yourself inside and welcomed than bringing $13,000 worth of champagne? It works. Try it. The conference was quite a success. There was a lot of disagreement and resistance, but the unachievable happened. Many believed that this would go nowhere, but everyone agreed at this conference to have another conference. That doesn't sound like a lot, but at the time it really was, especially for those from Prince Edward Island and Newfoundland to say that they would be in attendance at this Quebec conference, the second conference. That meant a lot, considering those were the colonies that were resisting the idea perhaps the most. This second conference was very important. It's when many of the laws that would eventually form Canada were created and really worked on. Of course, the third and final conference would take place in London, England. In fact, the Queen was present as well. She had the final say in all of this. But the Queen agreed that the Union was, of course, a good idea. And the creation of Canada happened in 1867, made up of 4 colonies, now called provinces. That would be Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick. You will notice that Prince Edward Island is not included in that list. Prince Edward Island chooses not to join Canada. That's right. The place that we now call the birthplace of Confederation didn't even join Confederation. Again, I think something went wrong there. Of course, it was a success, but there were some mistakes made. Looking back from our lens now, we know that Confederation was to continue and evolve. For example, at the time, there were many unheard voices. The fathers of Confederation, they're all old white guys. There were no women spoken to. The women weren't even allowed in the room where it was to be discussed. Here on the island, our First Nations, the Mi'kmaq, were not talked to whatsoever. And across Canada, many First Nations and Indigenous people were not talked to. They had no idea that these dealings were going on. People of color, people now that we would look back, if we were to do this again, we would include more voices, I certainly hope. And that is, I think, the biggest failing and causing perhaps more problems now than the fathers would have realized. But it was an end of an era for Prince Edward Island. We don't join Confederation. We continue on our own. We're doing fairly well. Having this wonderful shipbuilding industry really fueled our economy and made many people travel here. The island was going through this golden era. It was doing very, very well until we decided to build our own railroad. Well, the Canadians had a railroad. Prince Edward Island should also have a railroad if we're going to be equal. And believe me, Islanders believed they were equal. So we had to have a railroad. We began building it. It costs way more than we ever intended. There might have been a bit of corruption or a lot of corruption. But in the end, the island is bankrupt. And we don't have many other options, especially when the shipbuilding industry collapses as well. The island's economy is not looking great. The island is scared for its future, and the big option seems to be joining Canada. And that's what happens. Prince Edward Island joins Canada in 1873, quite reluctantly, quite unhappy to be part of Canada. However, that does change, and Prince Edward Island is definitely quite pleased to be part of Canada now. Of course, this is just a little guide to the evolution of Canada. In 1867, we have Ontario, Quebec, and Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. Then in 1870, Manitoba joins, and as well with the Northwest Territories. In 1871, British Columbia joins. That's right, British Columbia joins before Alberta and Saskatchewan. There were already people living on the West Coast, but in Alberta, Saskatchewan area, there wasn't a lot of colonial activity taking place. 1873, Prince Edward Island joins. 1898, the Yukon adds its name to the list. In 1905, that's when Alberta and Saskatchewan join in. The railroad really sees the population of that area rise. In 1949, Newfoundland finally gives in and decides to join Confederation. I'm sure you might hear a little bit more about that in a moment. And in 1999, Nunavut divides itself from the Northwest Territories, creating its own identity. That's it for my slideshow. Perhaps I will now open it for questions.
Yeah, I just want to say, Cameron, for presenting. Does anyone have a few questions or any questions for him? Perhaps about PEI in general or what he just talked about?
I talked more about Confederation than Prince Edward Island, but I feel going first, it's important to know what Confederation was.
Feel free to, you can type your questions in the chat or unmute yourself.
I just covered it so well.
Yeah, I guess since we don't have,
I was going to
maybe
say, it's interesting for myself as a Canadian. I was taught all of this as a child, but I'll be honest, such an amazing job to make it entertaining and an interesting story that for me, I'm like, oh yeah, when I learn about how all the provinces came on separately, it's something for me as a Canadian I forgot about. I often have the appreciation that you think the country came together all at the same time, but I think you really helped to illustrate that it's a process that takes place. I remember being, I think I was in maybe grade 9 at the time when the news of Nunavut becoming its own territory was news. And I remember being in geography class, and it was like April 1st of 1999 when the announcement came out. And our geography teacher said, I want all of you to know that as of today, all of our geography textbooks are wrong because of Canada. And it was the first time to feel like, oh wow, that's a pretty cool part of our history that we get to see happen, and to such a big change of our country's map. And so it made me think about it as you're sharing all the provinces being added and the territories that, you know, you think it's forever ago that it all happened, but I know maybe some of our students maybe weren't born yet in 1999, but I know for me it was something I remember thinking about in grade 9 and seeing it happen and think, wow, like this is a big part of our history that just happened.
Yeah, Canada as a country is very, very new. 1867 is not that long ago in the grand scheme of things. And I always find it very interesting to note that each province really does have a very strong and different identity. There are a lot of similarities, of course, and over time, those differences, I think, have shrunk. But during the time of the conference in 1864, when Johnny MacDonald, Thomas D'Arcy McGee, these fathers of Confederation from the Canadas are coming to the Maritimes, people on the crew are asking, what are Maritimers like? They did not know one another. They had no idea. The amount of trade that took place between Prince Edward Island and the Canadas at that time was less than 1% of our total trade. The news didn't talk about the Canadas. It was a different country in all aspects. It was a very different place, and the idea of these complete strangers coming together and being able to form a country and agree on something in only a few years is pretty mind-blowing and pretty unbelievable, but it happened. And without insane amount of bloodshed too. I think something Canadians can be proud of.
I have one question because we know that you're also helping to represent PEI. What's your favorite part of PEI's culture?
Oh, I think maybe it's because of our huge tourism industry, but I don't think, I think it existed beforehand. The island is perhaps one of the most welcoming places. People who come here, you really don't see it until you experience it. Every islander has something to contribute to guests coming here. Every islander is willing to spend a lot of time and thoroughly enjoys it too. The hospitality of Prince Edward Island, I think, is our shining quality. That's what I'll say.
And for someone who stayed, I went there for a conference and then stayed for a couple more days for a vacation in Charlottetown. And I absolutely agree with that. The hospitality and the way of life was so much more calmer than I think in Ontario, where Ontarians are always, our culture in Ontario is that we're always busy, right? When you ask how you are, an Ontario person will say busy, right? I appreciated that tremendously in my time in PEI, is that everyone felt like, as just even a citizen, that everyone took this role of being a hospitable individual, and that you kind of also had a quasi-tour guide role as being a citizen of PEI. So if you had questions about something, you're talking to a cab driver, you're talking to somebody on the street, you had people ready to essentially be a tour guide for you. And it was beautiful. I knew the homes and how everything looked. It made me think, I want to live here someday. It's beautiful.
Do it.
Cool. Thank you so much, Cameron. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes. Thanks again, Cameron, for presenting for us. We're really glad you can join us. But now it's time for us to move on to our next stop. All right. See you, Cameron.
So long.
All right.
So just gonna screen share. Okay, so we're gonna jump into another province. So we're now going to go to Newfoundland and Labrador. This is such a beautiful place. I fell in love with all the pictures while I was just searching for it. I want to go there now. So we have one more trivia question, of course. So does anyone know what's the capital of this province? Just put it in the chat or just unmute yourself and say it. Oh. Ryan. Don't Google it though, okay? Just take a guess. Okay, we're going for St. John's. Anyone else? Oh, Puria and Reina. Anyone else? Everyone's just going for St. John. Not to be.
No.
Oh, man.
You know what's the answer for this? Cass.
Oh, it's St. John's. They're right.
Yes. Well, I feel like that was an easy one. I don't know why, but
They all knew it. We're just testing you to make sure you know.
yes.
Got to make sure before we visit these places. All right. So we hope you all enjoyed our last stop, but our next stop is Point Amur Lighthouse. I pronounced it right. Right, Lori? Tamara? Oh, not very good. But
You did good. You did good.
here you can see the lighthouse. We have a few more photos for you. There you go. That's what it looks like. So now I'll turn things over to Lori. And Lori will talk about the history of this popular historic site.
Okay, thank you. So first, let me get my screen share. From the beginning. So I guess can everyone see that? Everyone see that? Okay, good. All right. So thanks so much for having me. That was it was really nice for you to ask us to participate today. My name is Lori, and I'm the Public Programming Officer for Provincial Historic Sites. We actually operate 11 historic sites across Newfoundland and Labrador. Some in St. John's, some in elsewhere on the island of Newfoundland, and we have one site in Labrador, which is the mainland part of our province, and that's at Point de More. I'll bring a picture of it. Point de More Lighthouse Provincial Historic Site. I'll say first that our office, our main office is in St. John's, which is the capital, and good job on everyone for getting that right. Good job. So my office is not in Labrador, but I've been there several times to visit the site there, and it's absolutely stunning. Every time I go there, it's sunny, so I don't know if I'm good luck or what, but I've had really good luck whenever I've gone there, and it's been beautiful blue skies and very nice there. The lighthouse there, it's near the community of, I'll say where it is here. Here we go. So people can know where we are. The lighthouse is actually close to the community of Lansamore, which is a very small community. I think there might be 4 houses there now. It's very, very small. The closest larger communities are the communities of Fordo, which is the closest community, and the community of Lansalou, which is to the north. So one's to the south and one's to the north. It's a pretty remote part of the province. To drive there from St. John's, it takes about 12 hours, and then you have to get on a ferry. So it's not close. It takes a while to get there. Beautiful spot though. Before I get into the lighthouse, I have the history of Point de More, and the area goes back thousands of years. There was so I've operated a couple sites, so I had to take some notes. Near the community of Lansamore, there's actually the oldest known burial mound in North America. It's about 7,500 years old. The Maritime Archaic people, who are the earliest people that we found archaeological evidence of in Newfoundland and Labrador, they lived in this area between 9,000 and 2,000 years ago. And they found tools and different things like that. And they found this burial mound. It was a teenage boy, a younger boy, and he was found with various grave goods, including a puggling harpoon, so a whaling harpoon, and other grave goods as well. And you can see it here. Can you see my arrow? This is the actual mound right here. And then you can see, oops, I clicked my button. There we go. And then you can see the ocean here. And the ocean at that time actually would have been closer to the burial mound from where it is now. So this would have been underwater at that point. So Point de More is primarily known now for the lighthouse that's there. It was prior to the 1850s, vessels coming into Canada and down the St. Lawrence, they would go around the south of Newfoundland. It is a bit longer, but it's safer. This point of water here is called the Strait of Belle Isle, and it is very dangerous. It has ice probably 8 to 10 months of the year sometimes. I've been up in that area in August, and there's still icebergs there. So it can be quite dangerous for a sailing ship. At its widest point, the strait is only, the most narrow point, it's only around 16 kilometers across, so it's not wide either, and that's at Point de More, actually. That's the most narrow part of the channel. So sailing ships will go around the southern route. Once steamships came into common use, they decided to use the more northerly route. It was known for shipwrecks as well, so one of the things that, it was actually the province of Canada. So this is the 1850s, is before Canada was a country. So that's going to link back to the last presentation very nicely there. They actually built lighthouses along the Strait of Belle Isle to make it safer for ships coming into port down the St. Lawrence. So they built one at Pointe-Amour, which is the most narrow part of the strait. They built one on the island of Belle Isle, which is at the entrance of the strait. And then they also built one at Cape Rosé in Gaspé, which links to the next presentation quite nicely as well. And then they built one at West Point on Anacostia Island in Quebec. So that those two there, they mark the entrance to the St. Lawrence River. So there's other lighthouses built along there after that, but they were the first four. And they're all very similar to the Pointe-Amour Lighthouse in terms of the tall towers, that kind of thing. So the Pointe-Amour Lighthouse is actually the second tallest lighthouse in Canada, the tallest in Atlantic Canada. The tallest lighthouse is actually the one in Gaspé, so I don't know if he's going to mention that in his presentation. But our Pointe-Amour Lighthouse is 33 meters high, or 109 feet. It's still an operating lighthouse today. It is fully automated, so there's no lighthouse keeper or anything there now. But it is it's quite tall, and you can actually climb right to the top if you were to come visit us in Pointe-Amour. So it's about 132 stairs. Those are my feet to the right there as I'm looking down. I have a tendency to take a lot of pictures. And to the left there, that's one of our staff people on one of the ladders. There's two ladders that go as you climb to the top of the lighthouse. And actually, I don't know if you can see this, but I did take video once of me climbing it. So you can see that. My husband made fun of me when he was looking at this video, and he's like, you get a little bit slower towards the top. I'm like, yeah, I do. But once you get up now, I didn't get the ladders because that wouldn't be safe for me holding my cell phone and trying to climb a ladder. But you will be able to see the view from the top. The view from the top is quite spectacular. It's a panoramic view of the Strait of Belle Isle, and you can actually see in the distance the island of Newfoundland because it's not actually that far across. So I'll wait to get to the top here. Here we go. So that's going up towards Forteau. And then you can see the strait, and you can see how I was there on a beautiful day, funny enough. That's going over towards the island of Newfoundland across the strait. And then we'll see up towards the north. And you'll see one of my coworkers here. There she is, waving. And then there's the light itself. So I'll just talk a little bit about the light itself. Ahead here. So it's a Fresnel lens. It's a second order Fresnel lens, which is one of the not the largest, but pretty close on it. It can be seen for 18 nautical miles from Pointe-Amour, which is about 33 kilometers. So it could be seen on a nice night from quite a distance away. Originally, the light was actually by oil. So you can see her now. It uses fully electricity now. But originally it would have been oil-based, and then they used petroleum vapors. So over the years, technology has changed. But the lens itself is the original lens that was first installed at Pointe-Amour in the 1850s. So that has not changed. It's the same one. And inside you can see, this is what it would look like inside the lens. This is an older one, but you can still get the sense here. This part is the part that spins, and you can see these two solid pieces. What happens, originally the light was just a solid beacon, but eventually what happened is they changed the pattern of all the lighthouses so they were different, so that way mariners would know which lighthouse they were passing, because if it was dark out, sometimes you might not know if it's say the one at Pointe-Amour or one that's a little bit further south. So in order for it to be a little bit more distinguishable, what they did is they changed the pattern of the lights. So the one at Pointe-Amour was 16 seconds of a light, and then 4 seconds of darkness, and then 16 seconds of light and 4 seconds of darkness. And then you would know in the nighttime that you were passing the Pointe-Amour lighthouse. What could happen if you made a mistake is that you might, a captain might actually cause to turn too early, and you could end up turning towards shore and turning into the rocks. Quite a few shipwrecks around have happened because of that. There was one just south of St. John's, the capital, that happened in 1914. It was a ship called the Florizel, and that's what they had done. They had mistaken one lighthouse for another, and they ended up crashing into the rocks. So it was something they had to be really careful of, especially at night, because it can be, you want to make sure that you're being safe. So that was our Pointe-Amour lighthouse. So the lightkeepers, so over the years, there was 7 lightkeepers at Pointe-Amour. It was quite a big job to do. It wasn't just making sure that the light was working. Back years ago, one of the things they had to do was carry lamp oil to the top of the tower. so 132 stairs, to get that oil to the top of the tower to make sure the light is working. They have to clean the glass regularly to make sure it was clean. And this is actually something that our staff, and when they're on in the summertime, also has to do. So they actually clean the glass as well of the lens to make sure that it is clean and operating, because of course it's still an operating lighthouse. Which is strange when you're standing up there on the top of the tower and like the light is like turning behind you and you're like, am I blocking this? but you're not. So you want to make sure the light is working. So 16 seconds off and on, and then 4 seconds off. They also would watch for ships and icebergs, take note of the weather conditions, and they look out for anything like whales, birds, seals, that sort of thing. One of the things they had to do was, it wasn't just them and their family who would have been at the light station at Point Amour. The lighthouse keeper would also have at least 1 or 2 assistant lighthouse keepers, and their families would be there. There was also, at one point, there was a radio station, like a Marconi station for ship-to-shore radio that operated at Point Amour. So the operator of that station would be there, and his family. So at one point, there might be 30 to 40 people living at Point Amour to operate the light station. So the lighthouse keeper was also kind of like a mayor, I guess. He was in charge of making sure that everyone was being taken care of and that everyone was doing well and that sort of thing. So that was very important for them. In later years, one of the things they had to do, or they had to actually wind the light as well. It kind of worked like a clock pendulum before it was operated by electricity. So they make sure it was wound all the time as well, every couple hours, to make sure that it was working properly. So the lighthouse keepers, the family that's most associated with Point Amour are the Wyatt family. A lot of lighthouses in Newfoundland and Labrador in particular are very associated with one family, who, with the role of lighthouse keeper, passed from father to son. The Wyatts were originally from Quebec, and they came from Quebec in 1879. So just under 20 years after just over 20 years after the lighthouse became operational at Point Amour, and they were the lighthouse keepers for 83 years at Point Amour. So the first one was Matthew Wyatt, and then he went to his son Thomas. And then Jeff Wyatt was the last one in 1919 to 1963. Jeff Wyatt is the man pictured on the picture of the right. So the older man here. And also he's the young boy, the tall one, standing at the end of this picture here. And this is him here with his family, who would have been also at Point Amour. The last lighthouse keeper was Max Shepard. He became keeper in around 1963, and he was there until 1995, 96. And that's when the light at Point Amour became completely automated. So there's no longer a lighthouse keeper just responsible for Point Amour. It's operated through the Canadian Coast Guard. So if there is any issues with the light, our staff call the Coast Guard, and they will come in via helicopter from Coast Guard station, and then they'll do any repairs, which did happen last year. They had to come by helicopter and do some repairs. So I mentioned that shipwrecks were a lot of shipwrecks along the Strait of Belle Isle, because it is quite dangerous. It has very strong current. It gets very deep in places. You would think Point Amour, you would think it would translate to love point, because amour is love in French. But it's originally named, we think it was named Point au Mort, which is Dead Man's Point. So it's a little bit more, not as romantic, but it's a little bit more apt, I think. Picture here is the wreck, the most famous wreck on the coast, because they couldn't talk about all of them. The HMS Raleigh was a 12,000 ton, 605 foot long British warship. They had been in the area in 1902, and they were in Newfoundland, and they decided to go over to try their luck fishing on Fort O, because it's quite known for their fishing. They were coming across in very heavy fog, and they made a mistake on their course. And they ended up going onto the rocks. So this is the ship here, you can see, crashed onto the rocks. And then this is Fort O Bay over here to the left. So they almost made it. They were pretty close, but they were a little bit off there. There was over 700 men on board. 10 men drowned. The rest of them were housed in the lighthouse on that night of August 8th, 1902. There was, the story goes, I remember the staff telling us out there that there was a man on every one of those steps going up to the lock of the tower, because they had to find space for somebody, for them somewhere, because it's not a large space, and they fed them tea and buns, which is probably a cup of tea and probably a tea bun or a bun of bread or something. Over the next 5 days, the men were housed in the nearby community of Fordo as well. They probably got that fishing in that they wanted to do. And then a ship came from Montreal to get them. Over the years, the British artillery have actually come the wreck was removed eventually. Now the ship also had munitions on it. So over the years, the British artillery have come and dived off the coast of Point Amour looking for unexploded munitions, which they have found and they have removed. So it's a safer area now. The last time they were here, I think, was last year or the year before. So they still come quite regularly to monitor what's left of the wreck underneath the water. And on the coast, there's still parts of the wreck as well. The trail that leads from the lighthouse is called the Raleigh Trail. It's a part of traditional footpaths that are maintained. So you can go along and you can see the parts of the wreckage that are left there. Every year on August 8th, we actually do a commemoration for the Raleigh. So we do a reef laying. So you can see the reef there on the beach near the area where the ship went aground. And one of the things interesting as well is that the townspeople in nearby towns, they actually went and they took things from the wreck and things that had come ashore. So you can see there's like a letter thing there, there's a telescope and other things. They will lend them to, some people will lend them to us when we have our commemoration on August 8th. So we can put them on display that people can see them. There are stories of things that certain people have that, like I think someone might have an organ or something from the ship. I'm not sure of things that washed up, but some people are more reluctant to have things displayed. So, and before I finish up here, Point Amour is also quite known for its natural attractions. It's quite a gorgeous setting, so you can imagine. Quite a few natural delicacies in Labrador are found at Point Amour, including fireweed, which is this purple plant here, and that's used to make a fantastic jelly. Much like, I know here it's become a big thing too, this making a type of, it's not really honey, but out of dandelion, so it's kind of a similar process to make the jam. It's a beautiful color, it's like a pink color, it's completely gorgeous. The middle one here is bake apples, if you've ever heard of them, or cloudberries as they're also known as. So this is the berry here, the orange berry. As you can see, they can be very hard to pick because there's one berry on one plant. So it can take a while to fill up a bucket full of bake apples. And they're used as well to make jams, jellies, cakes, pies, that sort of thing, syrups. And the last thing on the right is Labrador tea, and that's this plant right here. And those leaves are picked and then dried, and then you can turn it into quite a lovely tea. And of course, I can't forget to mention the fact that you can see whales, icebergs, and seabirds off Point Amour. Newfoundland and Labrador uses a lot of whales and iceberg imagery in particular in our tourism videos. So you can see both in Labrador. This is the iceberg I mentioned that I saw in August when I was up there. And as well, I was actually up there one year in September and I saw an iceberg. So they can last quite a lot longer up there than you can see them off places on the island. And as well, you can see whales, humpbacks being the most popular one that you see around that area. And you can also see gannets, which are this type of seabird here. They're a large white bird and they have very distinguished black tipped wings. And you'll see them often, they'll circle up high and then it's like they kind of just fall out of the sky into the ocean when they're trying to get fish. So that's how you can usually see a bunch of gannets. And I love watching gannets dive because I think it's just fascinating to see. Now, before I finish, I'm going to try to see if I can get this to work. Our provincial tourism did a video at Point Amour a couple years ago. And see if I can, I don't know if I can get the sound to work. Here we go. I'm going to try to get this to work. Can you see that? Okay. If you can't hear it, you can see the images. So that's good. It's only about a minute. Can you hear it?
Probably was no more than 7 or 8 years old when we started actually winding up. My dad was the assistant lighthouse keeper. First when we came here, the lighthouse wasn't automatic. When it was Dad's turn, like Dewey shift, we would go and wind the light for him. And you run till you get to the top. I can remember it as it was today, like even talking about it, I can remember just running up. So you would get up there first and wind up the light. Look around, you could see all, especially on clear days, like hey, you would see all around. It was just beautiful.
That was one of our tourism videos that we had done a couple years ago. They came up to Point Amour and did a video. The birds you saw at the end were the gannets I mentioned, the ones that were falling out of the air. And as well, then the whale, there was a humpback whale. So you could see that as well. And interestingly enough, they'd actually packed up all their gear, apparently, and they were getting ready to leave when all of a sudden they looked out and they saw a pod of whales that would just appeared off the point. So they quickly got their gear back out of the truck and started filming. So they made sure to get the whales there. So I hope you enjoyed your, oopsie. Oh, there we go. I hope you enjoyed your trip to Point Amour and got kind of a sense of the place and where it is. The natural landscape is really a very big part of the site and the lighthouse. And I hope you enjoyed it. There you go. If anyone has any questions.
Thank you so much, Lori. Well, after that presentation, I really want to travel there. I hope you guys, I'm sure you guys are thinking the same. Now we'll open up the floor for questions. So does anyone have any questions for Lori?
About Newfoundland Labrador as well. That's fine.
Yes.
I have a question.
Okay.
Question I have for you, Lori, and you talked a bit about it, so I'm wanting to just to make sure I'm understanding right. And it's about the light. So you said that like for Point Amour, there's like 16 seconds, the light's on, and then there's 6 seconds, was it? I think
4.
4.
Yeah.
And so when the lights, like, does the light actually turn off, or is it? My understanding when I ever thought of lighthouses was more like the light was rotating.
Yeah, it rotates. Yeah.
Okay, so
It rotates, so you can see in the picture they have like the 2 things on the side. So when that's facing you and it spins, that's the dark. That's the 4 seconds of dark. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was confused of like, yeah, if it was because I always feel like I see it and it's rotating.
When you see
if it goes off
one of our other historic lighthouse that we have is the lighthouse at Cape Bonavista, and you see it at that lighthouse. You see in a lot of our imagery as well from Newfoundland Labrador. That's the red and white lighthouse you see in a lot of pictures. And in that one, we have the older version of a light mechanism in that you can see, and that's very different the way that lighthouse operates. It's not the big lens. It does still rotate though, and it still has that timing, but it's a little bit different.
Thank you. Can I ask one more question? And more about Newfoundland and Labrador. I often, I think from an Ontario perspective, we often just say Newfoundland. And what part of it would you describe as Labrador? Is more the on mainland part of Newfoundland?
Yes, yeah. So Newfoundland and Labrador, well, originally, until not that long ago, actually, the official name of the province was Newfoundland. It was not Newfoundland and Labrador. That changed, I don't know if it's 10, 15 years ago now. It changed to be Newfoundland and Labrador. The Newfoundland part is the island, and then Labrador is the part on the mainland.
Okay.
Yeah, so Point Amour is on the Labrador side.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Is there any other questions?
Yeah. Anyone else have any other questions for Lori? Come on, there must be something you want to know. They're so quiet today.
I hope I didn't talk too fast. We have a tendency in Newfoundland, and well, the Newfoundlanders do anyway, of talking too fast. So,
does Ivan have a question?
Then
I have a question. What are scruncheons?
Scruncheons, good question. Scruncheons are, you can get fat back, which is like fat pork, salted fat pork, and you cut it up into little squares, and then you fry it, and then the scrunchie, it comes out and it's really crispy, and that's a scruncheon.
Okay. And is it true that you guys eat seal flippers?
I have never had seal flipper myself, but yes, I know my father-in-law has a big thing here on Good Friday is you have fish and chips. And for some people, the tradition is you have steel flipper pie. And for my father-in-law, his tradition is to have steel flipper pie. As I said, I've never had it. And one of my friends, her husband is from Labrador, and he actually said that for him anyway, the flipper is the worst part of the seal to eat.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know, but I've never had. Oh, I've never had it.
Okay.
My last question is about language. So I'm always interested in that. I think when we think of Newfoundland, there's often a dialect or sayings or phrases, right?
Mm-hmm.
You describe, I guess, what Newfoundland language is like that's different than saying can't like.
Oh my gosh. Well, a lot of it is very dependent on where you're from in the province. So certain words and certain accents are more prominent in certain areas of the province than the other. And I think a lot of that has to do with isolation. A lot of areas of the province, of the island anyway, or the island portion, were very isolated for a very long time. So you might have two communities that are next door to each other, but they don't really have much to do with each other because they're very isolated. And then you get pockets that are very predominantly, in terms of religion, they're Catholic or they're Anglican. And again, those, like south of St. John's, there's the Irish Loop, which is scenic drive, and they're very predominantly Catholic, very predominantly Irish. And they say in that area, and they were very isolated for a long time. So there's actually words and phrases used on the Irish Loop that are no longer heard in Ireland anymore. They're only, and certain dialects that are only found in the Irish Loop now, because they maintained those for so long because they didn't really have much to do with people from the outside of the area. So it's interesting. It's an interesting thing to look at because, I mean, Gregory asked about scrunchions. So another word is toutons, which is like a bread dough and you fry it, which is another, and I usually have molasses. We call them toutons, but in other places, some parts of the island, they're called frozies. In some parts of the island, they're called tiffins. So even in different areas of the province for something like that, there's different words. So it's very dependent on where you're from.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again, Lori, for sharing with us today. I've learned lots, and I'm sure our students have too. It was great to have you here. Thanks again.
No problem. I'll email the presentation to you.
All right. Awesome.
Right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Now we have our final tour stop of the East. We'll wait for Cece to get it on screen. There we go. Quebec. I'll let Cece take it away.
So that was a lot of learning right there. Especially how the light works for that, right? I never thought of what Ryan said before, but now it makes sense. I always thought that it was like going around. Yeah. And I'm glad I learned something today. So our next stop is Quebec. And of course, we have a trivia question for you guys before we go into our nice place over there. What's the capital of Quebec? Does anyone know? Is it Montreal or Quebec City? Just put it in the comments. Puya is saying that it's Montreal. Montreal again. Gregory's just laughing.
Oh, Puria says he loves Quebec.
I love Quebec. Oh.
Feel free to unmute yourself as well if you know the answer.
Montreal, I've only been to Montreal. It's beautiful. I love that. It's my favorite city so far in Canada.
Oh, we have another guess, Quebec City.
Okay. Anyone else?
And someone says they love Montreal. Montreal's beautiful. Cece and I have both been there, so it's a great place to go.
That was our first Canadian bus trip to Montreal. That was one of our stops, and we shared some pictures of us over there.
Yeah, no.
Oh, Ivan is speaking French now.
All right, any last second guesses? Oh, whoa, Ivan is now speaking in French.
Oh, Andrine is saying Quebec City too. So, it's very good person. What do you think, Ryan? What's the answer? You probably know it for now. So,
I'm not voting. I do know, and so I'm very interested to see, or very surprised to see how divided people's thoughts are.
yeah. Anyone else want to guess? I think that's all for voting. And Cassie, do you want to tell us the answer?
It is Quebec City.
I know I got confused with Montreal at the beginning too.
I know, me too. I had to think for a second.
But if I'm not wrong, Montreal is the biggest city or the largest city in the province. So,
Maybe
yeah.
Gregory can confirm that.
Actually, the reason why I was laughing at the beginning is because there's kind of a rivalry between Montreal and Quebec. So even though Montreal is the largest city and the economic motor of the province, it's actually Quebec City, which is the capital. And so there's always a rivalry between the two cities. So that's why I was laughing a little bit earlier on.
Yeah.
So, do we go ahead?
Yes.
Oh, we have a few photos
Okay.
of Gaspé. Well, there's more of Quebec.
And so for those of you who have been able to visit Quebec City before, it's actually one of the only walled cities in North America. And so it has a really quite a rich history. And because of the construction of the city, the interior inside the walls resembles a lot like some of the older European cities. So if you ever have a chance to go down to Quebec City and visit, it's really worth the while. And then you can come down to the Gaspé Peninsula.
Yes.
Do that in a moment. So there you go.
Yeah, there we go. So our next stop is the city of Percy. I probably don't say it right. I don't have the accent. You'll hear that from Gregory, but here's a few images of Percy Rock. I actually visited Percy back in 2015. I spent a day there. Beautiful city. I would have loved to stay a week, but there's some more images. And then I'll pass it over to Gregory, who's our final speaker for today, talking about Gaspé, like I mentioned, and the history, and some more history.
Okay, well, I'm going to try something out because all of you have been really working hard to learn English. So I'm going to try and say hi in as many languages as I can. So, hi, bonjour, hola, boa tarde, ni hao ma, konnichiwa, annyeonghaseyo, marhaban, salam chitori, kya hal hai. So I don't know if I got any of you in there, but I hope everything was okay. So I'm just gonna start the screen share. So I'm actually not from the region. I'm originally from Alberta. I moved to Quebec City in 1994. I visited the Gaspé Coast in 1996, and I've never left. So I'm now working for the city of Percé. I'm responsible for activities, culture, recreation, cultural activities, community activities. So it's a little bit of, I touch a little bit of everything. And I'm going to be presenting more of kind of a let's come and visit Percé presentation because I'm really proud of where I'm living right now. So welcome. The city of Percé is actually located, I'm just going to have to close my, there you go, is located on the eastern part of Quebec on the tip of the Gaspé Peninsula. It's actually, just hold on. It's actually the meeting of where the St. Lawrence River becomes the Gulf of St. Lawrence. The Gaspé Peninsula itself is approximately the size of Belgium, but only has a population of 150,000 people. Name of the Gaspé Peninsula originates from the Mi'kmaq word Gespeg, meaning land's end. The city of Percé has a population of approximately 3,100 people. It's a merger of 5 former municipalities, so it's quite a large city. Even though we have a small population, the city is 500 square kilometers large and has almost 78 kilometers of coastline. The city was first visited by Jacques Cartier in 1534, but the name dates back to a visit from Samuel de Champlain in 1603, where he noticed a large rock formation in the bay and he named it Île Percée, which means pierced island. The first documented use of the name Percé for naming the city was in 1850. And so this is actually an image from 1683 from when Percé was first visited. So you see the name Île Percée. The first residents of the region were actually the Mi'kmaq First Nation. The Mi'kmaq are an Algonquin-speaking people living in the southern part of the St. Lawrence and elsewhere in the Maritime provinces, as Cameron mentioned a little bit earlier for Prince Edward Island. They were one of the first nations that met with the European travelers and helped them with fishing and boating skills. Really, the most important industry since the 16th century was the fisheries. The area was always known as a very rich fishing area, as in most of eastern Quebec. You find cod from Newfoundland, all in the eastern provinces. Even 100 years before Jacques Cartier came into the region, it was mentioned in documents that there were whalers and fishermen from the Basque Country, from Brittany, from Normandy, from Spain, from Portugal. In 1776, a businessman from the Jersey Island, which is the French-English islands between in the Channel, English Channel between France and England. The island is called Jersey, and he established the Charles Robin Company. The company was actually a very important producer of salt cod. A few years later, there was another Jersey businessman that started a company called the Le Boutillier Brothers, but this time it's on Bonaventure Island. And a little time later, there was another Le Boutillier, John, who started another company on the north beach of Percé. It's actually really important to note that the Charles Robin Company is extremely important. The Robin Company is to salt cod as the Hudson's Bay Company is to fur. It's actually one of the largest multinationals at that time. The salt cod that they produced was called Gaspé cured and was world renowned for its quality. Just to give you an idea of how big the company was, in the middle of the 19th century, the company was making $150,000 a year, which was actually more than the budget of the whole province of Quebec at that time. Another example, in 1857, there were over 2.5 million kilograms of cod that was caught in Percé alone. So because of the international trade with Portugal, Italy, Brazil, and the Caribbean, Percé became the cod fishing capital of Quebec. The salt cod industry was a major employer actually until the beginning of the 20th century with the invention of modern refrigeration and transportation methods. The need for preserved fish, the salt cod, was less and less present, and people had more access to fresh fish. So even though that the salt cod was less in demand, there was still a large demand for the fresh caught fish. And so really up until all throughout the middle of the 20th century, up until the 1980s, the cod fishing industry was extremely important, as is elsewhere in the Atlantic provinces, Newfoundland, for example. Really, it was the collapse of the salt cod stocks that in the 1990s that caused the moratorium to come into effect, effectively shutting down the industry indefinitely. A lot of our cod fishermen started to fish other commercial catches such as shrimp, crab, lobster. And so today in Percé, we still have lobster fishermen that fish every morning. So if you're here in the spring until midsummer, you'll have a chance to maybe meet up with one of our lobster fishermen. Percé as well has been known as a very creative cultural center. Really, the first pioneer in terms of culture in the region is the American painter Frederick James. You see his house up on the cliff. He built his home in 1880, and it became a hub of for a lot of American artists to come visit. Really, the golden age of Percé's cultural history started happening once the roads opened up and the arrival of the automobile. That allowed artists from really everywhere to come and visit Percé. So we have artists, painters, writers, novelists, photographers, philosophers. During World War II, a famous French writer actually spent time in Percé, and that's where he was inspired to write his novel Arcane 17. There was a local artist, Suzanne Guité, who was very important in the cultural history of Percé as well. She was a painter and sculptor, and her, along with her husband, Alberto Tommi, who was Italian, they created the Centre d'Art in Percé, which at that point in time was really a cultural hub of artists that came from all over Quebec to create, to share, to spend their time. And part of these artists belong to a movement in Quebec called La Révolution Tranquille, which is known as the Quiet Revolution. So it was a period in the 1960s where really there was a big change in terms of the cultural, what the artists were doing. The culture and society of Quebec really changed from more of a conservative religious society to more open society. So it was kind of a counter-cultural movement. But still today, there are artists that come every year from around the world who are inspired by the rugged nature of the region, by other artists who have come. And so this heritage of Suzanne Guité has remained. Today, one of the most important industries of Percé is the tourism industry. And once again, with the arrival of the automobile and the roads that allowed people to travel more, Percé saw the beginning of what is known as really the beginning of the tourism industry. Each year, as I said, Percé is a small town of 3,000 people, but each year we receive between 400,000 and 450,000 visitors during the summer alone. One of the major attractions is the Percé Rock. So you see the Percé Rock here, and at one point in time, the Percé Rock actually had two holes, two arches, until one of its arches collapsed in 1845. Another activity which is very popular is a boat tour around the Percé Rock and around Bonaventure Island as well. So you can either access the tour of the Percé Rock by boat, or you can even actually rent a kayak and do your own tour of the Percé Rock. When the boat tour leaves the Percé Rock, it starts heading towards to Bonaventure Island, which is one of the greatest natural sites in Percé. Bonaventure Island is home to over 200,000 nesting seabirds that come every year to reproduce. And the largest population is actually the northern gannet. Once again, the same bird that was mentioned in Newfoundland. The colony of northern gannets in Percé is over 110,000 individuals. They come in the spring to reproduce. They lay one egg, and then they leave. They raise their young, and they leave in the fall. And it's just an absolutely unbelievable spectacle to see all these birds. And actually, when you're on Bonaventure Island, you're within maybe 1.5 meters of the bird colony. So you're really quite close. And the photo doesn't really do it justice, but the wingspan of the northern gannet is almost 6 feet. So you can just, so about 1.5 meters, 2 meters. So you can see really how large the bird is. And as was mentioned, the northern gannet dives to fish. So you'll see them flying around the bay following schools of fish. And when they see the fish, they'll close their wings and they'll dive. They can actually hit the water at up to 90 kilometers an hour and dive up to 9 meters in depth. Another attraction in Percé is the UNESCO Global Geopark. So in 2018, the Global Geopark was created in Percé, and a Global Geopark is actually an area which was created to use the geological heritage in connection with the other aspects of the area's natural and cultural heritage, to enhance awareness and understanding on key issues facing society. It's actually only one of the 3 geoparks in Canada. And so throughout the site in Percé, there are 27 different geosites that you can visit. We really have a particular geology of the region. On the Gaspé Peninsula, we're actually at the end of the Appalachian mountain chain, which starts in southeastern States and comes up all the way to the Gaspé Peninsula. And it's a very old mountain chain, so there's quite a lot of interesting sites to visit. So there's a lot of interpretation, and there's always a scientific element to the geopark. So it's a great way to visit. What's interesting is because of the history of the Mi'kmaq people of the region, the geopark collaborated with the Mi'kmaq First Nation to integrate some of their culture, language, and folklore into the visit. But I mean, that's just the natural world. In Percé, there's so much more to do. You can, there's a lot of recreational activities, scuba diving, artistic activities, whale watching, art galleries, shows, their summer festivals, art festivals, symposiums. So it's really, I mean, there's something for everyone. There you go. That's one of our favorite pictures. Percé is a coastal town, and the last, I'd say maybe the last since the middle of the 20th century, there's been a phenomenon where there's less and less sea ice in the winter. And so the action of the waves are hitting the beach almost 12 months a year. And in the last 10 years, we've had a lot of episodes of coastal erosion. In 2014 and 2016, we had 2 major storms that severely damaged the coastline. And so starting in 2017, the city of Percé embarked on a giant, colossal project to reclaim the coastline. So this project is now finished, so we have a brand new face of Percé. This coastline, this project is just unbelievable. There were almost 9,000 truckloads of rocks of different sizes that were delivered to create a new beach. That's over 1,800 tons of raw material in all. It was a massive, massive change of the coastline, but everything was done to ensure that we're protected from coastal erosion in the future. And we're actually really quite happy because the project won a National Architects Award. And so you can see now the new face of Percé, and really, you know, we welcome you to come down and visit us. What I forgot at the beginning of the presentation is that we are in Quebec, in Eastern Quebec. Quebec, the main language is French. but there is quite an important English community on the Gaspé Coast as well, because we've had our people coming up from New Brunswick. There were the Acadians, there were the Irish that came. There were a couple of ships that were actually shipwrecked on the coastline, and there was some Irish immigration. So really, in per se, I'd say about 10% of the population is English speaking. So that's about it on my end. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. And yeah, come visit us. You can actually, what you can do is start off in Percé, head down to Charlottetown, then take the ferry down to New Brunswick and visit Eastern Canada.
Well, thank you so much, Gregory. That was awesome. It makes me want to go back to Gaspé again. So does anyone have any questions for Gregory about Gaspé? Or he might know some more about Quebec too, so you can ask him if you have any questions. Come on, I know you're not shy.
Well, just I know that you know, Canada is, you know, this is very large, and there's a lot of differences between the provinces. In Ontario, you've probably traveled around Ontario, but just to give you an idea, from Montreal, it's approximately 1,000 kilometers to get to Percé. So we're really actually, if we're pretty much at Land's End, here. So it's you know, so rent a car and spend a couple of weeks.
I have a question. I was curious, Gregory, with tourism, you mentioned, I think you said it was 400 to 450,000 people when it comes to Percé.
Yep.
I'm curious, do most of those individuals, are they always coming by car, or do you do, like, are there cruise ship? Like, I know I visited PEI and I saw they have a cruise ship industry that shows up.
Yeah, actually, traditionally, the clientele in Percé is about 80% Quebecers that come here, and most of them come by car. We do have an airport, but you know, it's a smaller airport. So even the international visitors, normally they'll either come by car or with a tour company that comes by autobus, by tour bus. In the last 10 years, we've been working in the tourism industry with the international cruise lines. So towards the end of the summer, in September and October, we've worked on a project to bring in the cruise ships. So we have about 20,000 visitors each fall coming in through the cruise ships. So they're either cruise ships that are coming up from the eastern seaboard in the States. Usually they go through Charlottetown, Halifax, Charlottetown, come up through the St. Lawrence and then down to Quebec City and Montreal, or from Montreal going down to Halifax, Charlottetown.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking, oh, it'd be cool to be able to do a cruise and visit each of these spots along the way too.
Yeah, actually, there's a company out from the Magdalen Islands, which I haven't spoken about. There's an archipelago just off the coast of Quebec called the Magdalen Islands. And there's a company that offers a ferry cruise ship going from Montreal. And so it stops off on the Gaspé Peninsula and then heads down to the Magdalen Islands.
Hey, cool, thank you.
Do we have any other questions for Gregory? Come on.
One more question. I know I seem to ask a lot of questions today.
That's fine.
Like, all the resolutions to me have been so fascinating. You mentioned that you originally grew up in Alberta, and so I'm curious if you can maybe compare, how would you describe the difference of, say, Quebec culture versus, say, Alberta and the prairies?
I actually have a weird point of reference for that question, because both of my parents are immigrants. So I'm first generation Canadian. My mother is Polish and my dad is Hungarian. And so growing up, we really had kind of like an Eastern European community. Yeah. So within my family, I'm finding that in Quebec, you know, the kind of European approach to, you know, to culture and to community is very similar. In terms of the sort of the English Alberta. I'd say Quebecers are a lot more warm. It's kind of the whole Latin kind of culture. So the French, the Italians, the Spanish. So people touch more. They kiss on the cheeks. They eat supper for 3 hours. We like wine. We like beer, and yeah, actually, when I moved to Quebec, actually, I went to university in Vancouver, and I just fell in love with the sea. But Vancouver is really expensive. So when I discovered the Gaspé Peninsula, I kind of found the same thing that I had in Vancouver between the mountains and the ocean. And the quality of life versus the cost of living is unbeatable here.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much.
Are you sold, Ryan?
Yeah, I want to go to all these places. I want to travel. Recent years, I've been traveling outside of Canada whenever I want to travel. And I keep saying to myself, I need to actually experience more of my own country and travel more, because I'm thinking, what other country do I want to go to? But there's a lot of great things in Canada as a country that's so large in size that there's so much to explore here at home.
And I'd just like to congratulate all of the participants today with your courses, because I can relate to them, because when I first moved to Quebec, I didn't speak any French. And so I know the feeling of arriving somewhere and having to learn the language and making mistakes and sometimes have people laugh at you for saying the weirdest things. In Quebec, there's a word that has like 4 or 5 different meanings depending on how you pronounce the U sound. And so you can either talk about your neck or your butt or being hit. And so, yeah, so in the beginning I made a lot of mistakes, but yeah, so good for you guys. It's great effort.
Well, on behalf of everyone, I just want to thank you again for joining us today. We've learned lots, and I think you've convinced us why we should travel to Gaspé. So thanks again for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, and good luck with the end of your session.
Thank you so much. Bye, Gregory.
Bye, everyone.
All right, friends. So, man, it's 2:30 already. It's been a whirlwind, and we're at the end. But before you go, because we're not pressuring you to stay after 2:30, because that was only the required time. We want to kind of debrief what happened here. So we want to hear your thoughts and comments about the presentations. Did you like it? Would you want to do it again? Maybe which was your favorite, or for the EFAS students who have to do a presentation on it, do you know what you want to search or do it on? I don't know much about your assignment, but we'd love to hear from you. In the chat or unmute your mics.
I'm on camera, friends. It's okay.
We're not scary, you know us.
Well, favorite part. It's just us now. So.
Yeah.
Oh, look. Hey, Purya.
Purya.
Yeah.
Oh.
Do you know what topic you're choosing for your assignment?
Not yet, but it's I didn't read the instruction well, but it's about I think we should report or talk about the trip that we had today. Yeah, maybe.
Do you
Yeah,
have a favorite place?
my favorite place, yeah.
Mine was the third one. The rock part looked amazing.
Adriana says her favorite was the city of Perse. Yeah, it's beautiful. And then Ivan says he thinks he'll retire in PEI, guys. He's moving to Canada. Love it.
Honestly, that's the place I thought. If I had to move somewhere to retire, when I went to PEI 2 years ago, that's exactly my feeling. I'm like, this is the perfect place to retire. Everything was very close by, right? Like I didn't need to, you know, get on a city bus to go anywhere, right? You had this beautiful access to water and the ocean. The food, one thing we didn't talk about is PEI is also famous for its ice cream. It has a type of ice cream that is run by a place called Cows. And every day.
House creamery?
Yeah. I had ice cream every single day I was in PEI because I've never had like the most amazing ice cream in my life. It was so good.
Is it better than the Italian one?
Better than gelato, yes. Yeah.
Wow.
I liked, both are great, don't get me wrong. I'd eat both any day. But if I had to pick, I loved the PEI ice cream. Mm-hmm.
Well, now that we've done the east, we would like to move to the west part, kind of the more fun part, because it's gonna be just Cassidy and I. So you guys are welcome to stay. I promise it's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we understand if you have to go because we're running over time. We totally get it. But like Vancouver is pretty great, okay? Like you don't want to miss out on this.
Not better than Quebec.
Better than Quebec. Have you been to Vancouver?
No, but
Wait, there you go.
actually, Vancouver, I think one of the most beautiful city in the world. I think it's a top 10 in the most beautiful city in the world. But for me, Quebec was amazing because the whole city is built on like a castle. The whole city of Quebec is built like a castle, and there was a great war between England and French. Happened near to Quebec City, old town, which just makes Quebec one of the great place to visit. Yeah.
All right. I love this photo. I can't get over this view. Every time I know someone who goes to BC and like takes a photo like this with like bright blue water, it's like, oh, I want to go there. Such a great view.
Wait just a second. We're having some difficulties here.
Okay.
So yeah, we're gonna move to British Columbia. This is actually really exciting for me too because I've never been to British Columbia.
Me neither.
So I was going to I was going through the pictures and it's just really, really fun. And I want to go there now. Ryan said that he's been to Vancouver before.
I feel like Ryan's been everywhere.
Honestly, in
I
2011.
have to say, I've only been to Ontario, BC, Quebec, and PEI. So
Okay.
the 4 provinces. And that's why I say that I've been to so many other countries. I've been to about 15 countries, but I haven't been to all the provinces. And so I need to set that as a goal. I definitely think I want to do Newfoundland next.
My dad will say that like every time we say that we want to go somewhere else, like around the world, just like another country, he'll be like, why don't you just like travel around Ecuador first and get to know your country before like going out? And I was like, oh, I don't know. And he did that. He actually went on a road trip with all of my uncles. They all together, the 5 of them, just went on a road trip for like longer than a week or so, and they went to so many places. Yeah, and they said that it was really, really fun. So now that's why my dad like knows most of the country by now. And whenever I say like, oh, like my friends want to go visit, friends who are not from Ecuador, they would be like, oh yeah, like tell them to come here, like I'll drive and we'll go on a road trip. And I was like, that's so sweet.
Oh,
So now you know, if you want to go to Ecuador, you got a driver. Okay, so let's do this. Let's go to BC. And we're gonna go to Stanley Park first. So this is actually a beautiful park. I'm just gonna show you a few pictures. And Stanley Park is the Vancouver's first and also largest park, urban park that they have over there. And it's really beautiful because we'll show you in a video, but you have everything there. You have the city part, you also have the nature, and also history. It is really rich in history. You have the scenic views of water, mountains, skies, and trees along the whole park. And it's so, so, so big. You have wildlife, beautiful beaches, nature, culture, and also historical landmarks. The park has a long history and was one of the first areas to be explored in the city, even before it was a park. The land was originally used by the indigenous people for thousands of years before British Columbia was colonized by the British. And after that, also for non-indigenous settles. The land was turned into Vancouver's first park when the city was incorporated in 1886, and it was named after Lord Stanley. But actually, it was who was the Governor General over there at the time. But actually, before that, it was called Peninsula, and it was set aside for the military fortifications to guard the entrance of Vancouver Harbor. So it wasn't a park at the beginning, but then they turned into this beautiful park where you can go with your bike or just like running over there. It's really, really nice. And now we have a trivia question for you guys. Just put it in the chat for the answer.
Or unmute your mic. We'd love to hear your lovely voice.
How big is Stanley Park?
Ryan says 320.
It's the largest park in Vancouver. I'll just say that. But you go and take a guess. Take a guess. Ryan said 320. Anyone else?
Oh, come on, guys. Take a guess. I have no idea. I'll guess 400. Oh. Adriana says 560.
There's no idea.
Love it. What's Ivan think? I can see your face, but you're muted.
I see that. Don't Google it though, okay?
Yeah, that's cheating. Don't do that.
So actually, Stanley Park, the answer is the first one. Cassidy, you were right.
Wow! I had no idea, guys, I promise. This was Cece's part, not mine. Hey!
400-hectare natural west coast, rainforest, and as I said before, it's full of water, mountains, skies, and just beautiful landscape. And you can do whatever there. It's so big, honestly. And now we have a video for you. It's really quick. We'll play it.
Here we are in Stanley Park, one of my favourite places in the world in the heart of Vancouver, Canada. I'd love to show you around some of my favourite corners, from the famous seawall walk to the spectacular gardens and wildlife you can spot along the way. It's 1/5 larger than Central Park in New York and almost as big as Vancouver's whole downtown area, so let's go. There were so many reasons I wanted to go back to Vancouver again this year, but the seawall was top of my list. This is the longest uninterrupted waterfront path in the world, taking you right around Stanley Park with spectacular views back to the city's skyscrapers and across the water to North and West Vancouver and the mountains in the distance. The loop around the edge of the park is about 9 kilometres or 5.5 miles. Such a peaceful walk to take in the fresh air, an inspiring jog with all that great scenery, or you might like to bike. Really, lots of people do, or even rollerblade or hop on a horse-drawn carriage. As you work your way around the seawall, you'll see the Brockton Point Lighthouse at the easternmost point of the park, 9 famous First Nations totem poles, and the mighty Lionsgate Bridge will begin to appear. Named after the 2 mountain peaks north of Vancouver known as the Lions. The scale of it is so dramatic, whether you're walking under it or even going over it. About 2/3 of the way through the walk, you'll be rewarded with a sighting of Siwash Rock, a spectacular rocky outcrop on the edge of the park that's part of Squamish legend for the Indigenous people of this region. You can't miss it. Look for the tree on top. If you'd rather head straight to the centre of the park, you'll be greeted by glorious gardens and rainforest, 400 hectares of it in fact. Gosh, too many varieties of flowers and plants to name, but those allium, the tall pom-pom looking things, are particularly noticeable near the Rose Garden. And I'm pretty sure British Columbia is the rhododendron capital of the world because these bushes just flourish here in spring. Anyone needing a break yet? Stanley's Bar and Grill near the Rose Garden is a great spot to pause for a cool drink or a bite to eat. But let's keep going. We're not far from the Vancouver Aquarium in the heart of the park. It opened in the 50s as Canada's first aquarium and now houses 50,000 animals, including some beautiful beluga whales and adorable sea otters. So it's not just humans who enjoy a day in Stanley Park. At least 500 species of wildlife are found here in the wilderness. You'll definitely run into a Canada goose or 10 and plenty of gorgeous goslings in spring. But you could also spot bald eagles, great blue herons and woodpeckers. Several beavers call Beaver Lake home, of course, and I've even seen a raccoon and a harbour seal hanging out around the seawall, so keep an eye out. Thank you for joining me on this quick tour of some of my favourite spots in stunning Stanley Park.
What do you guys think of it? I love the aquarium over there. See, it has everything. That's why it's so large. So as a fun fact about BC, 2/3 of British Columbia's land base is forest land, and more of the half of that area has had little non-human contact. Cassie, you're muted.
Sorry, I just said wow if you wanted to hear that.
Yeah, it's a really large province, and it's really, really beautiful to explore. We'll see more about it soon. Let's move on to the next one.
Oh yeah, now it's my turn. Sorry. Our next stop is Gastown. Sorry, you have to do the slides. I don't have control over that. Here's a few photos. Super beautiful. So fun fact, Gastown grew from a single tavern. And what I mean by tavern is like a restaurant. It's like another name that serves mainly drinks, but also food. It was founded by John, nicknamed Gassy Jack. Don't know how he got that name, in 1867, and to become the attraction that it is today. Now we have some more photos.
Yes. There you
It's
go.
a really cool place. It's ideal to walk, explore on foot, because you can go down a lot of streets, and a lot of cool places.
Ooh.
Also, it's romantic, as you can see from the photo that Cece chose. You know, a great place. I'm just kidding.
Because of this part.
I know it's super pretty, and actually that clock is like a common like place to go visit. Um, I'm just teasing. Go explore with friends, yourself. It'll be lots of fun, and it's really cool. All right, so trivia time. We got to fill in the blank. So Gastown is Vancouver's blank neighborhood. Which one do you think it is, guys? You can say in the chat, or you can unmute yourself.
Is it the craziest? The wildest? Oh, the wildest is not. Ryan saying that it's the oldest.
Do we got any other guesses, friends?
The most, is it the craziest? Wait.
Their nightlife is pretty fun, gotta admit. Do we have more? Oh, just 16. But Ryan's right. Gastown is Vancouver's oldest town. And really cool. I really want to visit. I never even heard about it until Cece told me about it. So that's like added to my list of where I want to travel. But that, that's. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that I got intrigued by the clock, with the little like. But yeah, it is beautiful.
Oh yeah, and I forgot, but we have a short video, so you can see the streets of Gastown and what it's like.
It's plain.
There you go. Now you know a park and a small town you can visit the next time you're in BC, or your first time in BC. Oh no, where did Cece go?
I'm here. I was just.
Oh, it's like
I always have a hard time with videos.
it's all good. It's just like, did we lose her? I'm not sure.
So now we're gonna go to our next stop. It's actually really, really nice park, and as Puria was saying about the oldest city and the castle in Quebec, there's a castle over here too, so you can enjoy it. So this is Hadley Park, and this is the Hadley Castle. The castle is also part of the Royal Roads University, and this is in Victoria, Vancouver Island. The castle was completed in 1908, and it was first also a university college, but now it was turned, or part of it is turned into a actual university. I'll show you more pictures of it. It is really, really beautiful and funny, you guys. Is it true or false that Hadley Park is a popular location for filming and has been featured in many films and TV shows? Do you think that this place looks familiar for you in any TV show or movie? Yes, Priya. It is really beautiful.
I have no idea. Ryan says it looks like Harry Potter.
I was looking at pictures and it looks amazing during winter with all this snow covered. Oh my God. So do you guys think that this was used for filming too? It is open to wedding venues and just events.
We're just throwing that out there, you know, if you need a venue in the near future.
But this park is actually, and especially the castle, is a popular location for a lot of the films that you've probably watched and you haven't realized that that was in Vancouver.
You have a list, CC?
Yes, some of them is, the castle is shown in Smallville television series. Also, the castle has been featured in 2 series of X-Men and a lot of movies for X-Men. Like most of the movies or popular movies that I was looking in the list are from X-Men. And I don't know if you guys watched those, but I've watched them, but I don't remember. The X-Men film series starting from 2003. It's X-Men United and include The Last Stand, Deadpool, Deadpool 2, X-Men's Apocalypse, and Dark Phoenix. I didn't know that Deadpool 2 was filmed in BC because one of my friends who was in studying over there, she passed by the location where they were filming one of the scenes, and she told me, but I didn't know it was in that park. Or at least the OGs. What are you saying, Cassidy? You probably know this. I watch all the movies.
No, I haven't. I'm sorry.
Ryan sent a picture.
I know, I can't. I'm having issues viewing it, but it's probably just my computer.
Well, here are more pictures, and I was saying this is the inside, and this is how it looks like during winter. I feel like it's beautiful. There's some parts of it. And now it's part of a university called Royal Roads University.
The winter one looks like Game of Thrones.
I've never watched the show, but I've
Neither.
It looks like that kind of style, right?
Sure, why not?
Another fun fact is that British Columbia is the largest and most westerly province in Canada, and it is 4 times the size of Great Britain.
Wow.
This coastline is over 27,000 kilometers. So now you
Wow.
with a lot of nature. By the way, it's a great place to visit. But yeah, I can't believe. Yeah, there's more castles coming, so stay tuned. Let's go with Cassidy.
Woo! You know, I've struggled to pronounce this right, but after a long time, it's pronounced Craig Derrick Castle. If I'm pronouncing it wrong, I'm sorry. I'm just listening to what Google told me. But yeah, here are some beautiful photos. Yes, another beautiful castle. Fun fact. Let's see. So, did you know that this castle is an example of a Bonanza castle, which is a massive house people built when they became wealthy during the industrial age. So you'll learn a little bit more about this castle soon. Can go to the next slide. There's another view. It's smaller. It's not as big as the other castle that we saw, but still very beautiful and elegant, and a popular National Historic Site. So this castle is specifically from the Victorian era, and in this case, the industrialist who built the house was named Robert Dunsmuir, sorry if I pronounced wrong, who was a Scottish immigrant who made a fortune from Vancouver Island coal. Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
Looks really, really nice. Oh, here are some pictures.
Yeah, and then there it is when it's getting built. And you can see it's on a hill. So if you look in the bottom right corner, if you want to go back, it's built on a hill that overlooks the city of Victoria in Vancouver.
Yeah.
All right, so we got a true or false question. So Craig Derrick Castle, the Victorian-styled mansion, was built between 1887 to 1893. Is this true or false?
It took 5
Oh.
years.
How long place?
It says that it's false.
Did you use Google, Poria? I'm kidding. Do we have any other guesses?
No, I'm gonna.
Oh, oh my gosh! I'm just kidding, Poria.
How long will it take to build this kind of castle?
Yeah, do you know the answer?
It's so beautiful. How long would it take? Does anyone else know if it's true or false? Depends, but around 5, I think. Oh, but it is 5 years then.
Yeah, that is 5.
Why did it false then? Did you know about the castle before this? Is that what's happening?
Feel free to unmute yourself so you don't have to type it all out.
It doesn't seem so that much old for me.
Oh, because of the interiors or just the structure outside?
Yeah, the interiors, I think.
Oh, interesting.
Well, Cassidy, what's the answer?
You're right. It's false. It actually only took from 1887 to 1890, so 3 years.
Wow, 3 years.
Yeah. All right. That's all I got on the castle. And our next stop is...
Cassidy said that she loves bridges, and so we saved the best for the last. This is our last stop, and it is one of my favorites. It's called, oh, actually, I don't know how to pronounce this. KP, I don't know.
Capilano. That's what I would say. Capilano. Capilano.
Well, that one over there, this is it. I was gonna say this castle. This bridge is built on top of the Capilano River. That's where its name is from. And it's one of the most popular tourist attractions in Vancouver, of course. Fun fact, I got to know about this place because I follow one of the actresses from Pretty Little Liars, and she went there 2 years ago, and I was like, that's Toronto. Oh no, sorry, that's Canada. And then she said that she was in Vancouver, and she showed all this, and it was really, really beautiful. It looks like something that I want to do. So I really want to go there now. It has a mix of natural wonder, and it has a lot of treetops. A fun fact is that Nancy Stewart, the current owner, used to sell ice cream at the park before she actually bought it. She bought it in 1983, but before that, before that, she used to just sell ice cream over there. Here are some more pictures of it. And a trivia time. What's the best time to visit the bridge? Is it summer, spring, winter, or all of the above? Tell us your answer. What will be the best time for you to visit this? Oh, Andrine.
Me too. That's what I'm saying.
But everyone, just take a guess. So I'm just gonna show you some pictures and say that for me, it will be all of the above, because this is winter and what the bridge looks like in winter, and it's beautiful. The Festival of Lights, it's called Canyon Lights, and it's a special festival in winter at the Cap Bridge that runs from November to January, end of January. And it's just basically hundreds of thousands of lights put around the entire park area, highlighting the wonder and beauty of this special place even more. It is a beautiful place, and I was looking at pictures like this ones, and it's really, really nice. It will be totally worth it to go.
I know, I want to go there so much. I have a thing for bridges now. And everywhere I go, it's like, oh, when they have a cool bridge, especially if they light up at night and if they change color, then they're just so cool. And I have a fear of heights, so this would terrify me, but I do it anyways. It's so cool. It's also when you're out in nature and you're not surrounded by anything either is super cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say that one of the things that I read was that they said that this bridge was designed in a way that you can enjoy nature without damaging it, which is really, really beautiful, and just being far from everything else and just being one with nature. This is a great opportunity for that. I thought I had another trivia question, but that's it for now. I know this has been a long, really long trip. Lots of information, but I'm happy that you guys joined.
Yeah, we had lots of fun, and we hope you learned a lot from our speakers. They were very good and talked about a lot. Does anyone have any questions, comments? We hope for our EFAS students who are joining us that you have lots to write about or lots of ideas. And we'll make sure you have access to all this content shortly. So stay tuned for more information on that.
Yeah, and again, thank you for joining us. This was kind of more educational tour rather than the totally touristy one that we had first, but we're really happy that you guys can learn new things and just get to know new places, and the history of like behind them.
Yeah, and here's a little, tomorrow we have our conversation hangout at 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, so our time here in Waterloo. So if you're free and you want to come out for some chill conversation, actually, we're talking about hometowns, and you can tell us about your hometown.
Yes.
So come join us because we'd love to see you there, and we'll learn more about hometowns and where people are from.
Yeah.
Anyways, we hope you enjoy the rest of your day, afternoon, morning, wherever you are. And we'll chat again soon. We hope to see you at future events. Bye, guys.
Guys.